It's a tragedy, but we knew the risks. We were chasing our dream, and sometimes that means taking a risk.
Welcome to our video on the topic of fatal incidents on Mount Denali. Known as North America's highest peak, Mount Denali, previously known as Mount McKinley, has been a popular destination for climbers and hikers from all over the world. However, the mountain's treacherous terrain and unpredictable weather conditions have also made it a site of tragedy. In this video, we will delve into the history of fatal incidents on the mountain, exploring the causes and the lessons that can be learned from them. Join us as we pay tribute to the brave climbers who have lost their lives on this majestic peak and explore the steps that can be taken to make climbing Denali a safer experience for all. Number 3. The West Buttress Tragedy. In 1992, a group of 6 experienced climbers from around the world set out to conquer the West Buttress route of Denali, the highest peak in North America. They were led by John, a seasoned mountaineer who had climbed Denali several times before. The climbers were well prepared and the forecast was good, but as they reached higher altitudes, things took a turn for the worse. The climbers began their ascent, and were making steady progress. They were navigating the challenging terrain and dealing with the harsh conditions. But as they reached higher altitudes, the weather started to deteriorate. As the climbers reached higher altitudes, a snowstorm hit, and visibility dropped to near zero. They were forced to set up camp and huddle together for warmth. As the storm raged on, the climbers realized that they were stranded at high altitude and running low on food and supplies. They tried to make radio contact with the base camp, but they were unable to get through. The climbers were stuck in the storm for days. The storm finally subsided, but the climbers were still stranded. They tried to make their way down the mountain, but they were weak and disoriented. They fell into crevasses and slipped on ice. As their situation became increasingly dire, they began to succumb to hypothermia and frostbite. They were finally rescued, but it was too late for 6 of them. They were airlifted off the mountain and rushed to the hospital, but they were pronounced dead on arrival. The surviving climbers were in utter shock and grief as they came to terms with the loss of their friends. Number 2. The Kahiltna Glacier Tragedy. On one fateful day in 2012, 3 climbers, Jim, Sarah, and Mike were making their way up the steep and treacherous Kahiltna Glacier on Mount Denali. They were all excited and determined to reach the summit, but were also aware of the dangers and risks involved. They were all wearing heavy climbing gear and carrying large backpacks. They were roped together, and the sound of their crampons crunching on the ice was loud and audible. The Kahiltna Glacier is one of the most popular routes for climbers attempting to summit Denali. The 3 climbers were experienced mountaineers who had successfully climbed other peaks in the past. As the team began their climb, they encountered some challenging conditions on the glacier. Despite the obstacles, they continued to push forward and were making progress towards the summit. However, as they were making their way up the glacier, disaster struck. According to reports, as they were nearing the summit, the climbers were ascending a section of the glacier that was known to be prone to avalanches. Suddenly, there was fear in their eyes as they heard the ominous sound of thunder in the distance. The climbers definitely knew the risks but had never expected this. An avalanche was triggered by a large serac collapse that came crashing down the mountain, sweeping the climbers off their feet and pulling them down the glacier. Regardless of their desperate attempts to hold on, they were unable to escape the wall of snow and ice. The rescue team was alerted and they immediately began their search and rescue operation. However, the harsh weather conditions and treacherous terrain made the search extremely difficult. After several days of searching, the rescue team was finally able to locate the bodies of the 3 climbers, John, Sarah, and Michael, buried under the snow. The impact was brutal. It was clear that there was nothing that could be done to save the climbers. The tragic accident was devastating for the families of the climbers, and for the climbing community as a whole. The climbers were identified as Michael Anker, Christopher Norris, and Matthew Larson. They were all seasoned mountaineers and had years of experience climbing in the mountains. They had a shared passion for climbing, and had been friends for many years. Number 1. The Messner Couloir tragedy. On this fateful day in 2017, 4 climbers set out to summit the mountain via the treacherous Messner Couloir route. They were aware of the potential risks and hazards of the climb, however, they were assured that they'll be fine as long as they stick to the plan. The Messner Couloir is a steep and challenging route that requires technical climbing skills, and the climbers were experienced mountaineers who had successfully climbed other peaks in the past. The climbers set off early in the morning. However, as they were making their way up the Couloir, a steep and narrow gully, something went horribly wrong. According to witnesses, the climbers were ascending a section of the Couloir that was covered in ice and snow, when they suddenly lost their footing and began to fall. The fall was estimated to be around 1,500 feet, and the expected impact was fatal. Rescue teams were immediately dispatched to the scene, but due to the dangerous conditions, they were unable to reach the climbers for several hours. When they finally arrived, it was clear that the climbers did not survive the impact of the fall. The climbers were identified as John Moravec, Mark Moslow, John Genrich, and Michael Kellett. They were all seasoned mountaineers and had years of experience climbing in the mountains. They were a very close team, and had climbed together on many occasions, and were known for their safety and care on the mountains. Among many others, these 3 climbing expeditions serve as a sobering reminder of the dangers of mountaineering and the importance of being prepared for the worst. The tragic loss of these climbers will always be remembered in the annals of mountaineering history. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories and contents like this one. Until next time, stay safe and keep exploring.